For 47 years, I sacrificed everything for my son, James. I worked double shifts at the hospital as a nurse, went without new clothes, skipped vacations, and even sold my family's heirloom jewelry to put him through medical school. I was there through every fever, every heartbreak, every triumph. Then, on my 70th birthday, the very day I quietly tucked away the winning $380 million lottery ticket in my purse, James and his wife Vanessa told me I had become too expensive to keep around and needed to find more suitable living arrangements for someone my age. Their timing couldn't have been more ironic or more perfect for what would come next. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning of my 70th birthday began like any other day in the modest suburban home I shared with my son and his family. I woke early, my arthritis already, making itself known as I carefully made my way downstairs to prepare breakfast for everyone before they started their day. The kitchen had always been my domain, the one place where my presence in their home was still genuinely appreciated, if only for the results rather than my company. As I whisked eggs for James's protein-rich breakfast and cut fresh fruit for Vanessa's smoothie, I thought about the lottery ticket I'd purchased on a whim the previous week. It was only the third time I'd ever bought one in my entire life. The drawing had been the night before, but I hadn't bothered to check the numbers yet. At my age, dreaming about what I'd do with millions seemed foolish when I was more concerned with whether my Social Security check would stretch until the end of the month. "Morning, Mom," James said, barely looking up from his phone as he entered the kitchen in his tailored suit. My son had grown into a handsome man, tall like his father, with my hazel eyes, though none of the warmth I'd been told once shined in mine. He'd become a successful cardiologist, just as he'd always dreamed, largely thanks to the $160,000 I'd somehow managed to put toward his education. "Happy birthday," he added as an afterthought, still scrolling through emails. "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied, sliding his plate in front of him. "Is there any chance you'll be home for dinner tonight? I thought I might make that pot roast you used to love." James finally looked up, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "Mom, I told you last week. Vanessa and I have the charity gala. Tonight, the one for the hospital's new pediatric wing? I'm being honored." "Of course," I nodded, hiding my disappointment. "I forgot. I'm sorry." "It's fine," he said dismissively. "Actually, we need to have a talk this evening when we get back. Nothing to worry about, just some arrangements we should discuss." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. But before I could ask what he meant, Vanessa swept into the kitchen in her designer workout clothes, platinum blonde hair pulled into a perfect ponytail. "Barbara, there you are," she said, as though I might be anywhere else at 7 a.m. "Remember the Hendersons are coming for brunch on Sunday. I need you to make sure everything is spotless. Last time, Mrs. Henderson noticed dust on the baseboards and I was mortified." "Yes, of course," I said, handing her the prepared smoothie. "And please don't wear that faded blue sweater again," she continued, assessing me with the critical eye she'd perfected over the 12 years of her marriage to my son. "It looks so elderly. You can borrow one of my old cardigans if you need something presentable." I'd been wearing that blue sweater because it was the last gift my late husband, Richard, had given me before cancer took him 20 years ago. But I simply nodded, having learned long ago that explaining sentimentality to Vanessa was like describing colors to someone who only saw in grayscale, conceptually possible, but practically futile. After they left for work, the house fell into blessed silence. My grandson Tyler had already left for his summer internship at his father's hospital, and my granddaughter Emma wouldn't be back from sleepaway camp for another 2 weeks. I cherished these quiet moments when I could move through the house without feeling like an intruder in a space that had never really felt like home, since I'd moved in 5 years ago, after my modest retirement savings had been depleted by a series of unexpected medical bills. I poured myself a cup of coffee and finally remembered the lottery ticket tucked into my purse. On a whim, I pulled out my old tablet, a hand-me-down from James when he'd upgraded years ago, and looked up the winning numbers from last night's drawing. The first number matched, then the second. By the third match, my hands were trembling, so badly I had to set the tablet down on the kitchen counter. When all 6 numbers aligned perfectly with my ticket, I stared in disbelief, certain I was misreading something. $380 million, the second largest jackpot in state history. I sat down heavily on a kitchen stool, my heart racing dangerously fast. I'd spent my entire career as a nurse, caring for others through their most vulnerable moments. I'd raised James alone after Richard died, working night shifts and weekends, to ensure he never felt the absence of opportunity, even if he felt the absence of his father. I'd pinched pennies, darned socks, and eaten simple meals so James could have the best of everything. And now, at 70, I had more money than I could spend in a dozen lifetimes. My first thought wasn't about what I would buy or where I would go. It was about James. Finally, after all these years of him viewing me as a burden, though he'd never say it so directly, I could show him I wouldn't need his reluctant charity anymore. I could get my own place, maybe even help with Tyler's college, fund or Emma's future. Perhaps this windfall could heal whatever had broken between us over the years, as James had climbed the social ladder and seemed increasingly embarrassed by his working-class mother, who lacked Vanessa's polished pedigree. I decided not to say anything immediately. The lottery website advised winners to speak with financial and legal advisors before claiming such a large prize. Besides, I wanted to savor this secret for just a little while. This one thing that was completely mine in a house where I owned practically nothing. That evening, I prepared a simple dinner for myself and waited up for James and Vanessa to return from their gala. Despite my earlier disappointment about spending my birthday alone, I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd made a plan. Tomorrow I would contact a lawyer, claim the prize as discreetly as possible, and then surprise James with the news that I'd be getting my own place. I'd help with the grandchildren's education, maybe set up a foundation in Richard's name. I imagined the relief on James's face when he realized I'd no longer be the financial burden he clearly considered me. It was nearly midnight when I heard the front door open and the sound of Vanessa's laughter floating up the stairs. I straightened my blouse, not the blue sweater, and made my way down to the formal living room where I knew they would stop for their customary nightcap. "Mom, you're still up?" James said, loosening his bow tie. He looked tired but pleased, the slight flush in his cheeks suggesting he'd enjoyed several glasses of champagne at the gala. "I wanted to hear about your evening," I said, smiling genuinely. "Was the ceremony nice?" "It was fine," Vanessa interjected before James could answer. "Though the Robertsons asked about you, which was awkward. They remember you from the hospital. Apparently." "George Robertson," I nodded. "I helped care for his mother in the ICU years ago." "Well, he seems to think you hung the moon," Vanessa said with a tight smile. "James had to explain that you're retired now and enjoying your golden years." I wanted to point out that my golden years mostly involved cooking their meals, cleaning their house, and babysitting their children for free, but I held my tongue. Today of all days, I could afford to be generous in spirit. "Actually, Mom," James said, setting down his glass of bourbon, "that's part of what we wanted to talk to you about. Your situation." I sat down slowly on the edge of the pristine white sofa that Vanessa had always warned me not to sit on without placing a throw blanket beneath me first. Tonight, I didn't bother with the blanket. Something in James's tone told me this conversation wouldn't be a pleasant one. "We've been thinking," James continued, sitting beside Vanessa on the matching love seat across from me, "that this arrangement isn't really working anymore. Not for any of us." "What arrangement?" I asked, though I already knew what he meant. Vanessa leaned forward, her diamond earrings catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Barbara, you need more care than we can provide. You're getting older, and this house isn't really designed for aging in place. I almost laughed. I was the one who cooked their meals, tended their garden, and cared for their children. Just last week, I'd spent hours helping Emma with her science project while they attended a wine tasting. I'd fallen once, just once, 6 months ago when I'd slipped on the waxed hardwood floors Vanessa insisted upon, and they'd never let me forget it. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself, I said calmly. I don't need any special accommodations. James sighed, exchanging a look with Vanessa that I'd seen countless times before. The look that said I just didn't understand their world. Mom, it's not just about physical care. It's about your quality of life. And frankly, it's about our privacy too. We need our space, Vanessa added bluntly. This arrangement was only supposed to be temporary after you ran through your savings. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. Those savings had disappeared because I'd used them to help James through a malpractice suit 7 years ago. One that had been dropped, but had cost $60,000 in legal fees. Money I'd given freely, without hesitation, or expectation of repayment. So, what are you suggesting? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. James pulled a glossy brochure from inside his jacket and handed it to me. Sunny Pines Retirement Community. It's nice, Mom. They have activities, medical staff on site, and you'd be with people your own age. I looked down at the brochure. The affordable living option was a 400-square-foot studio apartment that cost $3,200 per month, more than my entire Social Security check. How exactly would I afford this? I asked. Another exchanged glance between them. We'd help, of course, James said, though his tone lacked conviction. And you could work in their gift shop or something for extra money. They have a program for residents to earn pocket change. Pocket change. At 70 years old, after working since I was 16, my son expected me to stock shelves for pocket change. I see, I said quietly, still clutching the brochure. And when would this move happen? Well, Vanessa said, crossing her legs and adjusting her designer dress. We've actually already put down a deposit to hold a unit. They had a cancellation, so we were lucky to get it. You'd move in next week. Next week. They'd made this life-altering decision without even consulting me. The house will be easier to manage without having to worry about your needs, James added, as if this would comfort me. And honestly, Mom, I think you'll be happier there. We're always so busy, and you're alone here too much. I thought about all the family dinners I'd prepared that they'd missed, the times I'd waited up worried when they didn't bother to call, the birthdays, including today's, that had gone uncelebrated because their social obligations took precedence. I understand, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. Inside, a lifetime of accommodation and acquiescence was finally giving way to something else, something that felt dangerously like rebellion. May I think about it overnight? James appeared relieved, clearly having expected more resistance. Of course, Mom, but the unit won't be held long. We'd need to confirm by tomorrow evening. As they headed upstairs, Vanessa paused and turned back to me. Oh, and we'll need you to pare down your belongings. Your unit will be much smaller and we're converting your room into a home gym once you leave. A home gym. My son and his wife were erasing all evidence of my existence before I'd even walked out the door. I returned to my room, the smallest bedroom in the 5-bedroom house, and sat on the edge of my bed. The lottery ticket was still in my purse, folded neatly beside my outdated wallet. I took it out and stared at the numbers that had changed everything. Yet nothing at all. In the morning, while James and Vanessa were still asleep, I slipped out of the house and took the bus downtown. The ride was long, giving me time to reflect on how I'd ended up here. I'd met Richard when I was 21, a young nurse full of idealism and energy. He was a patient recovering from a car accident, handsome, kind, and utterly captivated by what he called my healing hands and generous heart. We married 6 months later, and James arrived a year after that. Richard worked in construction, building houses for other families while saving to build our own someday. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy in our small rental, rich in love and plans for the future. When James was 7, Richard was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. He died 11 months later. I was 32, a widow with a confused 8-year-old boy and a mountain of medical bills. There was some life insurance, but not enough. I took on extra shifts, moved us to a smaller apartment, and focused everything on keeping James's life as normal and opportunity-filled as possible. When James showed academic promise, I picked up weekend shifts to pay for tutors. When he joined the swim team, I found a second job at a doctor's office to cover the costs of meets and equipment. When he was accepted to medical school, I sold my mother's jewelry and took out a second mortgage on the small house I'd finally managed to buy. Through it all, James had been a good son, studious, focused, and largely obedient. He'd never been particularly demonstrative or affectionate, but I'd attributed that to losing his father so young, to his driven personality. I understood his dedication to medicine. I'd fostered it myself. What I hadn't anticipated was how Vanessa would change him after they met during his residency. She came from money, old money as she frequently reminded me, and found my middle-class ways quaint at best, embarrassing at worst. Slowly, James adopted her perspective, becoming increasingly distant, increasingly critical of the very upbringing that had gotten him where he was. The city bus jolted to a stop outside the financial district. I stepped off, clutching my purse tightly, and made my way to the office building where I'd made an early appointment with Patricia Winters, an attorney specializing in lottery winners and sudden wealth. Patricia Winters's office was nothing like I expected. Instead of the opulent surroundings I'd imagined for an attorney who handled multi-million-dollar cases, her workspace was modest, practical, and bathed in natural light from large windows overlooking the city park. Mrs. Collins. She greeted me warmly, extending her hand. She was a woman around 50, with silver streaks in her dark hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. "Please, have a seat and tell me how I can help you today." I sat down, suddenly feeling foolish. What if I'd misread the numbers? What if this whole thing was a mistake? I think I may have won the lottery," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Patricia nodded, unsurprised. "That's why most people come to see me, Mrs. Collins. May I see your ticket?" With trembling hands, I removed it from my purse and placed it on her desk. She examined it carefully, then checked something on her computer. "Mrs. Collins," she said after a moment, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "This appears to be the sole winning ticket for the $380 million Powerball jackpot drawn 2 nights ago. Despite having checked the numbers multiple times myself, hearing it confirmed by this professional woman made my chest tighten. I pressed a hand against my sternum, trying to steady my breathing. "Are you all right?" Patricia asked, concerned. "Yes," I managed. It's been a difficult time, and this is overwhelming." "I understand," she said, though of course she couldn't possibly understand the irony of my situation. "The first thing you need to know is that we need to move quickly but carefully. In this state, lottery winners can't remain anonymous, but we can take steps to protect your privacy as much as possible." "What steps?" I asked. "We'll create a trust or an LLC to claim the prize. Your name will still be on public record, but it offers some buffer. We'll also need to assemble a team, a financial advisor and an accountant specializing in sudden wealth. And Mrs. Collins," she added, her expression serious, "you shouldn't tell anyone about this win until we have protections in place." I thought about James and Vanessa, about the retirement home brochure still sitting on my nightstand. "That won't be a problem," Patricia explained my options, taking the lump sum payment of approximately $223 million after taxes versus annuity payments, and outlined the immediate steps we needed to take. By the end of our 2-hour meeting, I had signed paperwork to create the second chance trust that would claim my winnings, made appointments with the financial team Patricia recommended, and scheduled a follow-up meeting for the next morning. "Just one more thing," I said as our meeting concluded. "How quickly can I access some of the money? I may need to make new living arrangements soon." Patricia studied me for a moment. "Is everything all right at home, Mrs. Collins?" No one had asked me that question in decades. The simple acknowledgement that something might not be all right in my life, that someone noticed, made my eyes sting with unexpected tears. "My son and his wife have decided I should move to a retirement home," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Next week, actually. They've already paid a deposit." Patricia's expression remained neutral, but I saw a flash of something, perhaps anger, in her eyes. "I see. We should be able to expedite access to some funds within 3 to 4 days. In the meantime, if you need immediate assistance with temporary accommodations or legal advice regarding your current living situation, I'd be happy to help." I shook my head. "That won't be necessary. I can manage a few more days." As I left Patricia's office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a very long time: power. Not power over others, but power over my own life, my own decisions. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. I took the bus back to James and Vanessa's house, rehearsing what I would say that evening. Part of me wanted to tell them immediately about my windfall, to see the shock on their faces. But Patricia's advice made sense. I needed to protect myself first. When I arrived home, I found Vanessa in the kitchen, unusually, with catalogs of exercise equipment spread across the counter. "Barbara, there you are," she said, not bothering to ask where I'd been. "I've been thinking about your move. We should start packing your things today. The sooner we get you settled at Sunny Pines, the sooner you can start adjusting." I hung, my purse carefully on the hook by the door, making sure my lottery ticket was still securely inside. "Actually, Vanessa, I've been thinking about that. I'm not sure Sunny Pines is the right place for me." Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. "What do you mean? James and I have already looked into it thoroughly. It's the best option for someone in your financial position." "I might have other options," I said carefully. Vanessa's expression hardened. "Barbara, let's be realistic. You have no savings. Your Social Security barely covers groceries. Where exactly do you think you'll go?" The condescension in her voice made something shift inside me. For 5 years, I'd bitten my tongue, swallowed my pride, and accepted their subtle and not-so-subtle reminders of my dependence. But no more. "I'm still considering my options," I said firmly. "I'll let you know my decision soon." Vanessa stared at me as if I'd suddenly started speaking a foreign language. "There's no decision to make, Barbara. This is happening. James and I have already committed to this plan." "Plans can change," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Not this one," Vanessa snapped, her pleasant facade crumbling. "Listen, I've been patient. We've been patient. We've housed you, fed you, clothed you. I cook your meals, clean your house, care for your children, and tend your garden." I interrupted. "I'm hardly a charity case, Vanessa." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Those contributions hardly offset the cost of keeping you here. Do you have any idea what our property taxes are? What it costs to heat and cool a house this size? To feed another adult? James works 80 hours a week saving lives, and I manage a household and maintain our social obligations. The last thing we need is to keep subsidizing you while you consider your options." I took a deep breath, fighting to maintain my composure. "I understand you feel I'm a burden. That will be remedied soon enough. But I won't be going to Sunny Pines." Vanessa's face flushed with anger. "We'll see what James has to say about that." As she stormed out of the kitchen, I sank into a chair, my newfound confidence wavering. Tonight's conversation with James would be even more difficult than I'd anticipated. My son had changed over the years, influenced by Vanessa's materialism and status anxiety, but deep down, I still hoped some part of him remembered who we had been to each other, who we could be again. But first, I needed to survive the next few days without revealing my secret. I needed to stand my ground and trust that soon, very soon, everything would change. Dinner that evening was excruciating. James had come home in a foul mood after losing a patient on the operating table, a complication no one could have foreseen, but one he took personally nonetheless. In the past, I would have been the one he talked to about such losses. I'd been a nurse. I understood the heartbreak of failed interventions better than Vanessa ever could with her business degree and country club upbringing. But tonight, as with most nights these past few years, he retreated into himself, barely acknowledging my presence as I served the beef stew I'd prepared, once his favorite meal. "James," I began carefully, setting down my spoon. "I wanted to talk to you about the retirement home." He glanced up, then exchanged a look with Vanessa. "Mom, Vanessa mentioned you were having second thoughts, but we've already discussed this. The decision is made." "I'm not going to Sunny Pines," I said firmly. "I appreciate that you've looked into options for me, but I'll be making my own arrangements." James set down his fork with deliberate slowness. "And what arrangements would those be exactly? You have no savings, no property, no income beyond Social Security." "I have plans," I said, unwilling to elaborate further. "Plans," he repeated skeptically. "Mom, be realistic. You can't afford an apartment in this city. Even if you could, you shouldn't be living alone at your age." "I managed alone for 20 years after your father died," I reminded him. "I raised you alone. I worked full-time alone. I maintained a household alone." "That was different," he said dismissively. "You were younger then." "I'm not incapable now," I insisted. "And I don't need your permission to make my own decisions." James's expression hardened, reminding me painfully of his father when Richard had been angry, the same tightening around the mouth, the same flash in the eyes. "Actually, Mom, you do need our help. You've been living in our home on our dime for 5 years now. We've been patient, we've been generous, but we need our space back." "James," I said softly, "I gave up everything for you. Everything. I never asked for anything in return." "Here we go," Vanessa muttered, rolling her eyes. "The martyr routine." James gave her a warning look, then turned back to me. "Mom, I know. You worked hard as a single parent. I've always acknowledged that. But that's what parents do. They provide for their children. It doesn't mean children are forever indebted." My heart ached at his words. When had my son become so cold, so transactional in his view of family? "I never said you were indebted," I said quietly. "But I did hope for kindness, for respect." "Respect?" Vanessa interjected. "Barbara, we've respected you enough to give you a home when you had nowhere else to go. We've respected you enough to include you in our lives, to let you be part of our children's upbringing." "Let me?" I repeated, incredulous. "I'm their grandmother. I'm James's mother. I'm not some stranger you're doing a favor for." "That's not what Vanessa meant," James said quickly, though his expression suggested it was exactly what she'd meant. "Look, Mom, the point is that we've found a good solution. Sunny Pines is a quality facility with excellent care. You'll have your own space, activities, people your own age to socialize with." "I don't want to go there," I said firmly. "Well, you can't stay here," Vanessa snapped. "That's not on the table anymore." I looked at my son, searching his face for any sign of the boy I'd raised. The boy who'd cried when he found an injured bird, who'd saved his allowance to buy me a birthday gift, who'd hugged me so tightly when he got his medical school acceptance. Letter that I could barely breathe. "James," I said softly, Is that how you feel too? That I can't stay here any longer? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom, it's for the best. For everyone. We've already paid the deposit. They're expecting you next Wednesday. And if I refuse? I asked. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, James spoke, his voice cold and detached, his doctor voice, the one he used to deliver bad news to strangers. Then you'll need to find another place to live. Immediately. I felt as though I'd been slapped. Despite knowing about my lottery win, despite having a plan forming, the reality of my son's rejection cut deeper than I could have imagined. I see, I managed, rising from the table. Then I'll be gone by Wednesday. Mom, James began, but I was already walking away, my dinner barely touched. In my room, I closed the door and leaned against it, allowing the tears to come at last. For all my newfound wealth, in this moment, I felt poorer than I ever had in my life. My son, my only child, the center of my world for so many years, had just made it abundantly clear that I was a burden to be managed, not a parent to be cherished. The next morning, I left early again, this time taking a taxi to Patricia's office with money I'd been saving for a small birthday gift for myself. The meeting with the financial team went smoothly, with discussions of investment strategies, tax implications, and wealth management that made my head spin. Through it all, I nodded and asked questions as best I could, though my mind kept returning to the previous night's conversation. Mrs. Collins, Patricia said as the financial advisors packed up their materials, you seem distracted today. Is everything all right? I hesitated, then decided honesty was best with the woman who would be helping me navigate this new reality. My son made it clear last night that I need to be out of his house by Wednesday, whether I go to the retirement. Home or not, Patricia frowned. That's very little notice. Do you have somewhere to go temporarily? Not yet, I admitted. I was hoping I might have access to some funds by then to get a hotel room. Patricia thought for a moment, then opened her desk drawer and removed a key. I have a vacant condo in Riverside Heights. It belonged to my mother, and I've been preparing to sell it, but it's clean and furnished. You're welcome to stay there until your finances are sorted. I stared at her, stunned by the unexpected kindness. I couldn't possibly— Yes, you can, she said firmly. Consider it an advance on my services. You'll be able to repay me 100 times over once your funds are accessible. Besides, she added with a gentle smile, I have a feeling about you, Mrs. Collins. Something tells me you've spent your life giving to others. Perhaps it's time you allowed someone to give something to you. As I left Patricia's office with the key to a temporary sanctuary, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: gratitude for her kindness, anxiety about the confrontation to come, and a deep, persistent sadness about James. The irony wasn't lost on me. After a lifetime of financial struggle, I now had more money than I could ever spend, yet the only thing I truly wanted, my son's love and respect, seemed further out of reach than ever. That evening I began quietly packing my belongings while James and Vanessa attended yet another hospital function. I didn't have much: clothes that were mostly outdated, a few photo albums, Richard's watch, the quilt my grandmother had made for my wedding. My life's possessions fit into 2 suitcases and a small box. As I carefully wrapped a framed photo of James at his medical school graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us beaming with pride, I wondered where we had lost our way. When had his ambition turned to coldness? When had his drive for success eclipsed his capacity for compassion? And perhaps most importantly, once he learned of my newfound wealth, would anything between us really change? Or would it only confirm what I was beginning to fear, that our relationship had become as transactional as his view of the world? Wednesday morning arrived with a sense of finality. I had spent the previous day quietly organizing my affairs, visiting my bank to ensure my meager accounts were secured, and calling my few remaining friends to let them know I'd be moving. Though, I shared no details about my lottery win or the circumstances of my departure from James's home. As I zipped my second suitcase closed, there was a soft knock at my bedroom door. To my surprise, it was my grandson Tyler, who should have been at his internship. "Grandma?" he said hesitantly. "Can I come in?" Tyler was 19, tall like his father, but with a gentleness that reminded me of Richard. Unlike his sister Emma, who had fully embraced Vanessa's materialistic values, Tyler had always seemed uncomfortable with his parents' lifestyle and attitude toward me. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, quickly wiping away a stray tear. "Shouldn't you be at the hospital?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I told Dad I had a morning class. His eyes fell on my packed suitcases. "So it's true. They're making you leave." I sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed and patting the space beside me. "It's complicated, Tyler." "No, it's not," he said with a flash of anger that surprised me. "It's wrong. Your family, they're treating you like an inconvenience." "Your parents have their reasons," I said diplomatically, though my heart warmed at his indignation on my behalf. "Dad said you refused to go to Sunny Pines." Tyler sat beside me, his young face troubled. "He made it sound like you were being difficult and ungrateful." I chose my words carefully. "I'm grateful for the shelter they've provided, but Sunny Pines isn't right for me. I have other plans." "What plans?" he asked, echoing his father's skepticism from days earlier. "Grandma, I know about money stuff. Your Social Security is barely anything. Apartments here cost thousands a month. I've been saving," I said, which wasn't exactly a lie. "And I have a friend who's helping me with temporary housing." Tyler looked unconvinced. "Let me help. I have savings from my graduation money. It's not much, but—" "Absolutely not," I interrupted, taking his hand. "Tyler, I love you for offering, but I would never take your money. I'll be fine, I promise." He looked down at our joined hands. "There's something else you should know," he said, quietly. "Something I overheard?" My heart sank. "What is it?" "Last month, when you were visiting Mrs. Henderson, I heard Dad and Mom talking about selling the house." "Selling the house?" I repeated, confused. "But they love this house." Tyler shook his head. "They want something bigger in Lakewood Estates. One of Dad's colleagues is on the board there. It's some exclusive gated community with a golf course and private security." He hesitated. "Mom said they couldn't move with you still living here. She said you'd complicate things. That the kind of people who live in Lakewood wouldn't understand why they were still supporting an elderly parent." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about wanting their space back or believing I needed more care. They were embarrassed by me. My presence was an impediment to their social climbing. "I see," I said quietly. "It's disgusting," Tyler continued, his young face flushed with anger. "After everything you've done for Dad, for all of us, you practically raised me and Emma while they were busy with their careers and social stuff." "They're your parents, Tyler," I reminded him gently. "Whatever their flaws, they love you." "Maybe," he conceded, "but they don't treat you right. They never have, not since I can remember." A lifetime of making excuses for James rose to my lips. But something stopped me. Perhaps it was time to acknowledge the truth, at least to myself. "No," I agreed softly. "They haven't." Tyler's eyes widened at my admission. I'd always defended James, always found explanations for his behavior. "What are you going to do?" I squeezed his hand. "I'm going to be fine. Better than fine, actually. But I need you to promise me something." "Anything. Focus on your education. Follow your own path, not the one your parents have mapped out for you. And remember that there are many kinds of success in this world, not all of them measured by bank accounts or addresses." He nodded solemnly. Will I see you again? Of course, I assured him. I'm not disappearing from your life. I'll always be your grandmother, no matter where I live. Tyler helped me carry my suitcases downstairs, where I found James waiting in the foyer, checking his watch impatiently. There you are, he said. I've arranged for a car to take you to Sunny Pines. They're expecting you by noon. He finally noticed Tyler. Why aren't you at your internship? I came to help Grandma, Tyler said defiantly. James frowned. You can't just skip commitments, Tyler. That internship is a vital step toward medical school. Some things are more important, Tyler replied, his voice steady. James looked as though he might argue, but instead turned back to me. Mom, the car will be here in 20 minutes. I've taken time off my rounds to oversee this transition, so please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. I won't be going to Sunny Pines, I said calmly. I've made other arrangements. James's expression hardened. We've been through this. You don't have other viable options. Nevertheless, I've made my decision. I moved toward the door. I've called a taxi. It should be here any minute. A taxi to where exactly? James demanded. To my new home, I said simply. This is ridiculous, James snapped. You're being completely irrational. Where is this supposed new home? How are you paying for it? Who's going to look after you? Before I could answer, a car horn sounded from the driveway. That's my ride, I said. Tyler, thank you for your help. Mom, James stepped between me and the door. Don't do this. Sunny Pines is the sensible option. We've already paid the deposit, made all the arrangements. If you leave like this, on some half-baked plan, don't expect us to pick up the pieces when it falls apart. I looked at my son, my accomplished, successful, emotionally stunted son, and felt a profound sadness. I've never expected that, James. Not for a very long time. Tyler moved to the door and opened it, picking up one of my suitcases. I'll help you to the taxi, Grandma. James stood frozen, clearly shocked by this small rebellion. As Tyler carried my luggage outside, I turned back to my son one last time. I hope someday you'll understand the difference between success and happiness, James. It took me 70 years to learn it myself. I touched his cheek gently. I love you. I always will. But I won't be diminished anymore, not even by you. With those words, I walked out the door of the house where I'd lived for 5 years, but had never truly been home, my heart both heavier and lighter than it had been in decades. Patricia's condo in Riverside Heights was nothing short of luxurious. Located on the 14th floor of a modern high-rise, it featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, gleaming hardwood floors, and tasteful contemporary furnishings. The kitchen was equipped with top-of-the-line appliances, and the bathroom boasted a shower with multiple jets and a soaking tub I could only describe as decadent. After the taxi driver helped me with my luggage, I spent nearly an hour just wandering through the space, marveling at the sudden change in my circumstances. The contrast between this elegant condo and my cramped bedroom at James's house was jarring. As afternoon faded into evening, I settled onto the plush sofa and gazed out at the city lights beginning to twinkle along the riverfront. For the first time in years, I was completely alone. No demands on my time, no judgment of my movements, no underlying tension. The silence felt strange yet welcoming, like rediscovering an old friend. My phone buzzed with a text message from Tyler. Did you get settled okay? Parents are furious. Dad called Sunny Pines and they said you never showed up. Mom is saying you're being selfish. I smiled sadly and typed back, I'm fine, sweetheart. Very comfortable. Please don't worry about me. Another message quickly followed. Where are you staying? Dad thinks you're at a cheap motel and will run out of money in a week. I hesitated before responding. I'm safe and well housed. That's all that matters for now. The next morning, I had just finished a peaceful breakfast on the balcony when my phone rang. It was Patricia. Mrs. Collins, she greeted warmly. I hope the condo is comfortable for you? It's absolutely beautiful, I assured her. Far too generous of you. Not at all. I'm calling with good news. The trust paperwork has been processed more quickly than expected. We can claim your winnings as early as tomorrow. The paperwork will still list your name as the winner, as required by law, but the trust provides some protection. What does that mean exactly? I asked. It means, Patricia explained, that your name will be in the news, but your specific location and contact information will be harder to trace. We've also arranged for the press conference to be minimal. You'll need to appear briefly, but we can limit questions and have security present. My stomach tightened at the thought of public exposure. Will there be photographs? Unfortunately, yes. It's part of the Lottery Commission's requirements. But we can keep it brief, and you'll have security escorts. After we hung up, I sat in silence, contemplating what was to come. Tomorrow, my life would change irrevocably. The private betrayal I'd experienced would become public victory, my name, and face broadcast across news outlets and social media. There would be no hiding from James and Vanessa then. No maintaining the quiet dignity I'd tried to preserve while leaving their home. Part of me, a part I wasn't entirely proud of, looked forward to them discovering the truth. Let them see what they had thrown away. Let them reckon with their own callousness in the harsh light of public scrutiny. But a deeper part felt only sadness at the knowledge that money, not love or respect, would likely be what changed their perception of me. That afternoon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mom? It was James, his voice tense. Where are you? I've been calling everyone we know trying to find you. Hello, James, I said calmly. I'm well, thank you for asking. This isn't funny, he snapped. You can't just disappear like this. I'm a doctor. I know what can happen to elderly people living alone without proper support. The condescension in his tone made me grip the phone tighter. I'm 70, James, not incapacitated, and I haven't disappeared. I've simply moved. To my new home, as I told you I would. What new home? He demanded. You don't have the resources for suitable housing. Whatever cheap place you found can't possibly meet your needs. I took a deep breath, looking around at the luxurious condo that was nicer than any place I'd ever lived, including his house. My needs are being met quite adequately, I assure you. This is ridiculous, he fumed. You're acting like a rebellious teenager, not a sensible adult. If you won't tell me where you are, at least tell me how you're paying for this mysterious new home. I closed my eyes, weighing my options. Tomorrow, he would know anyway. Perhaps it was better to break the news myself, on my own terms. James, I said quietly, I have something to tell you. Something I probably should have shared days ago, but I needed time to process it myself. I paused, gathering my courage. I won the lottery. The silence that followed was so complete I wondered if the call had dropped. You... what? He finally managed. I won the lottery, I repeated. The Powerball drawing last week. How much? His voice had changed completely, the anger replaced by something else, shock, certainly, but also a note I recognized all too well, calculation. The jackpot was $380 million, I said simply. Another long silence. Then a strange sound. Half laugh, half gasp. You're joking. This is some kind of bizarre revenge fantasy because you're angry about Sunny Pines. It's not a joke, James. I'm claiming the prize tomorrow. It will be in the news. Mom, his tone had softened dramatically, become almost tender. Why didn't you tell us? This changes everything. You shouldn't be alone right now. You need family around you. Lottery winners are targets, you know. There are scammers, thieves, all sorts of dangers. The sudden shift in his concern was so transparent, it would have been comical if it hadn't been so painful. I have excellent security, I assured him, and legal representation. Legal representation? Already? "Mom, you have to be careful who you trust with this kind of money. You should come home. Let me help you sort through all this." Home. The word hung between us, heavy with irony. The same home I'd been forced to leave just hours ago was now being offered back to me. Not because I was valued or loved, but because I was suddenly valuable. "I appreciate the concern," I said carefully. "But I'm quite comfortable where I am. My legal team is exceptional, and I'm being well advised. Mom, be reasonable." His voice had an edge of desperation now. "This is a complex situation. You need family support, proper guidance. Why don't I come pick you up? We can talk through all of this together, make proper plans." I closed my eyes, feeling a strange mix of vindication and heartbreak. "The plans have already been made, James. I'm claiming the prize tomorrow and moving forward with my life. A life that, until approximately 2 minutes ago, you had made abundantly clear didn't need to include you." "That's not fair," he protested. "We were concerned about your well-being, trying to find the best solution for your care. You're twisting things." "Am I?" I asked quietly. "Tyler told me about Lakewood Estates, James. About how my presence in your home was preventing you from moving into a more exclusive neighborhood," he faltered. "Tyler shouldn't have." "That was a private conversation, taken out of context." "Was it?" "Then explain the context to me. Explain how forcing your mother into a retirement home she neither wanted nor could afford was about my well-being rather than your social aspirations." "Mom, please." His voice had turned plaintive. "Let's not fight. This is wonderful news. We should be celebrating, planning for the future. Your future, our family's future. Our family, as if the bonds he'd been so willing to sever days earlier could simply be reformed at the prospect of financial benefit." "I need to go, James," I said, suddenly exhausted by the conversation. "I have appointments to prepare for tomorrow." "Wait," he said quickly. "At least tell me where you are. Maybe Vanessa and I could bring dinner tonight, make a nice evening of it." The same Vanessa who'd called me a burden, who'd complained about the cost of feeding me, who'd warned me not to sit on her white sofa without a protective cover, was now eager to bring me dinner. "Not tonight," I said firmly. "I'll be in touch after the press conference tomorrow." As I ended the call, I felt tears streaming down my face, not tears of joy or vindication, but of profound grief. In his immediate shift from disdain to deference, James had confirmed my worst fear. His love, his respect, his very conception of my worth as a human being was entirely conditional. And that revelation hurt more than all the years of subtle humiliation combined. The Lottery Commission's offices were more modest than I'd expected, a government building with fluorescent lighting and practical furniture. Patricia had arranged for me to arrive through a private entrance, avoiding the small crowd of reporters gathered at the main doors. Mrs. Collins greeted a smartly dressed woman who introduced herself as Diane Lowry, the Commission's Public Relations Director. "We're so pleased to meet you. If you'll follow me, we have a private room where you can wait until the brief ceremony." Patricia stayed close by my side as we were led to a small conference room. "Remember," she said quietly, "keep your comments brief. Thank the Commission, express gratitude, and defer any specific questions about your plans to your team of advisors. Don't share personal details or your location." I nodded, smoothing down the new blouse I'd purchased the previous day, a simple but elegant blue silk that Patricia had helped me select during a quick shopping trip. "What about questions about family?" Patricia's expression softened. "Simply say that you're blessed with family but are requesting privacy during this transition. No specifics." The ceremony itself was mercifully brief. I signed several documents, posed for photographs with an oversized check, and answered a few general questions with the practiced responses Patricia had helped me prepare. Yes, I was overwhelmed by this blessing. No, I hadn't made specific plans yet. Yes, I would be working with financial advisors to manage this responsibility wisely. When a reporter called out, Do you have family you'll be sharing this windfall with? I simply smiled and said, I'm fortunate to have family, but I'm requesting privacy for all of us during this adjustment period. 30 minutes later, it was over. I was officially a multimillionaire, my name and image now circulating on news outlets across the region. As security personnel escorted us back to Patricia's waiting car, I felt strangely detached from the entire experience, as if I were watching someone else's life unfold. You did wonderfully, Patricia assured me as we settled into the car's leather seats. Poised and dignified. Now, the next 48 hours will be challenging. Your phone will likely be flooded with calls from media, distant relatives, and financial services trying to solicit your business. I recommend you turn it off completely or change your number. I nodded, already seeing the notifications piling up on my screen. There were 7 missed calls from James, 3 from Vanessa, and numerous text messages. I powered off the phone, without reading them. What next? I asked, suddenly feeling the weight of my new reality. Now we implement the plan we discussed, Patricia said confidently. The trust is established, your initial funds are being transferred to your new accounts, and the security team is in place at the condo. Tomorrow we'll meet with the real estate agent to begin looking at permanent housing options. And James? I asked quietly. Patricia's expression grew serious. That's entirely up to you, Barbara. You're in control now. You decide who has access to you, who benefits from your generosity, who plays what role in your life moving forward. Control. Such a simple word for such a profound concept. For decades, my life had been shaped by obligation, sacrifice, and later, dependence. The idea that I now held the power to determine my own path and the nature of my relationships was both exhilarating and terrifying. Back at the condo, I finally turned my phone back on, bracing myself for the deluge. Among the dozens of notifications from unknown numbers and news outlets, James had called 17 times and left 5 voicemails. I steeled myself and listened to the first one. Mom, I just saw you on the news. I can't believe this. Call me immediately. We need to talk about security, about protecting your assets. I'm worried about you. The second. Mom, why aren't you answering? We're family. We should be handling this together. Vanessa and I are very concerned. The third grew increasingly agitated. This is ridiculous, Mom. You can't just shut us out like this. We're your family. We have a right to be involved in decisions of this magnitude. The fourth was Vanessa's voice, honey-sweet in a way I'd never heard directed at me. Barbara, darling, we're just beside ourselves with worry. James is frantic. Please call us. We only want what's best for you. Families should stick together during times like these. The final voicemail, left just minutes before I checked my phone, was James again, his tone now verging on desperation. Mom, please. I know things have been difficult between us lately. I admit we may have been hasty about Sunny Pines. We can work all that out. Just call me back, please. I deleted all the voicemails and scrolled through the text messages, which followed a similar pattern of escalating concern and entitlement. The last one from James read, If you don't call back soon, we're going to file a missing person report. This isn't normal behavior. I'm worried you're being taken advantage of or held against your will. It was emotional manipulation, pure and simple. A week ago, he'd been perfectly content to ship me off to a retirement home against my wishes. Now, suddenly, my absence was cause for police intervention. I composed a simple text in response. I am safe and well. I am not missing or being coerced. I need space right now and will contact you when I'm ready. Please respect my wishes. His reply came instantly. Where are you? We're coming to get you. I didn't respond. Instead, I called the security desk downstairs and instructed them not to allow James or Vanessa into the building under any circumstances. Then I turned off my phone again and walked to the balcony, gazing out at the river as the setting sun turned the water to molten gold. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting myself first, my needs, my boundaries, my peace of mind. It felt foreign, almost uncomfortable, like a muscle long unused suddenly called into service. But beneath the discomfort was something else. A growing sense of rightness, of reclaiming something essential that had been surrendered long ago. The following week passed in a whirlwind of activity. With Patricia's guidance, I assembled a team of professionals to help manage my newfound wealth. A financial advisor specializing in sudden wealth syndrome, an accountant with expertise in high-net-worth individuals, and a personal security consultant who had previously worked with lottery winners. Meanwhile, I began the process of reinventing my life from the ground up. A personal shopper helped me select a new wardrobe. Not extravagant designer labels, but quality pieces that fit properly and made me feel confident. A nutritionist designed meal plans to address the health issues I'd been ignoring due to lack of funds. I even scheduled my first appointment with a therapist, acknowledging that the emotional weight of recent events and decades of putting others first required professional support to process. James continued his campaign of calls and messages, alternating between concern, anger, and poorly disguised attempts to insert himself into my financial affairs. I maintained minimal contact, responding only with brief assurances that I was well and had proper professional guidance. 10 days after claiming my winnings, I found myself touring a beautiful 3-bedroom home in a quiet, upscale neighborhood, near the botanical gardens I'd always loved visiting. The house was perfect, single level with no stairs to navigate as I aged, a garden I could tend myself, a kitchen designed for someone who loved cooking, and most importantly, excellent security. Features including a gated entrance and modern alarm system. "It's lovely," I told the real estate agent, a kind woman named Helen who specialized in helping clients find homes that would accommodate aging in place. "And being near the gardens would be wonderful." "Shall we make an offer?" Helen asked. "Properties in this neighborhood don't stay on the market long." I hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Yes, let's do it. Full asking price." That evening, as I sat on Patricia's condo balcony watching the sunset, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Mrs. Collins?" a young woman's voice asked when I answered. "This is Emma, your granddaughter." I was momentarily taken aback. Emma had barely spoken 10 words to me in the past year, preferring to communicate through eye rolls and exasperated sighs when forced to interact with me. "Emma," I said carefully, "this is a surprise." "Yeah, well," she sounded uncomfortable. "I thought I should call. To check in, you know. Everyone's talking about you." "I'm sure they are," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Dad's pretty upset," she continued. "He thinks you're being manipulated by whoever's giving you legal advice." "I'm not being manipulated, Emma. I'm being properly advised by competent professionals." She was quiet for a moment. "So it's true, about the money?" "Yes, it's true." "Cool." Another pause. "So, I was thinking maybe we could get lunch sometime. Catch up?" The transparent nature of her sudden interest would have been comical if it weren't so painful. This was the same girl who had complained loudly about being stuck with me when her parents needed a last-minute babysitter for her during their Aspen ski trip last winter. "That would be nice," I said, deciding to take the high road. "But I'm quite busy getting settled at the moment." "Perhaps in a few weeks." "Oh," she sounded disappointed. "Sure, whatever. I just thought, never mind." "Thought what, Emma?" Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "Dad said you'd probably want to help with college tuition now, for your grandkids, and—" There it was, the real purpose of her call. Not concern for my well-being, not a desire to repair our relationship, but a coldly calculated attempt to secure her share of my windfall. "I see," I said quietly. "Emma, I'm going to say something important, and I hope you'll really hear it. There's a difference between being wealthy and being rich. Wealth is what you have. Richness is how you live, the quality of your relationships, the depth of your compassion, the way you treat people when there's nothing to gain. She said nothing, so I continued. I spent my life trying to give your father every advantage, every opportunity. I succeeded in making him wealthy by the world's standards, but I failed in teaching him true richness. I don't intend to make the same mistake with you and Tyler. Whatever financial decisions I make regarding my grandchildren will be based on the values you demonstrate, not the expectations you bring. That's not fair, she protested. You can't just decide who deserves your money based on who you think is nice enough. Actually, Emma, that's exactly what I can do. It's my money, my choice. Just as it was your parents' choice to decide I wasn't worth keeping in their home once I became inconvenient, she huffed in frustration. You're being really vindictive right now. No, I'm being honest. There's a difference. I softened my tone slightly. Emma, I love you because you're my granddaughter. That won't change. But respect and financial support are earned, not given. If you want a relationship with me, a real one, I'm open to that. But it won't be transactional. The next day, my offer on the house was accepted. As I signed the paperwork in Patricia's office, I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. For the first time in decades, I was creating a home that was truly mine. Not a compromised space in someone else's domain, not a temporary shelter dependent on another's goodwill, but my own sanctuary designed around my own needs and preferences. Congratulations, homeowner, Patricia smiled, handing me a pen for the final signature. Thank you, I said, feeling tears prick at my eyes, for everything. You've done all the hard work yourself, she assured me. I'm just helping with the logistics. Not just that, I insisted. You treated me with respect from the first moment we met, before you knew about the money. You saw me as a person of value, not a burden. Patricia's expression grew serious. Barbara, may I speak frankly? I nodded. In my years of practice, I've worked with many wealthy individuals, people who inherited family fortunes, executives with 8-figure salaries, entrepreneurs who sold their companies for billions. And I've observed something interesting. Money doesn't change people so much as it reveals them. The suddenly wealthy don't become kind or cruel. They simply gain the freedom to be more of who they already were. She leaned forward slightly. You've spent your life caring for others, often at great personal cost. Now you have the resources to care for yourself without sacrifice. But I've watched you these past weeks, and while you're certainly enjoying your new comfort, you're not becoming selfish or indulgent. You're still the same compassionate woman. You're just finally including yourself in that compassion. Her words resonated deeply, crystallizing something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. The money hadn't fundamentally changed me. It had simply removed the constraints that had prevented me from living authentically. As I left Patricia's office that afternoon, I realized I was standing taller, breathing more easily. The constriction in my chest that had been my constant companion for years, the physical manifestation of living on others' terms, had finally begun to ease. I was becoming visible to myself again, after decades of focusing the lens exclusively on others. It wasn't so much a transformation as a remembering, a gradual reclaiming of the woman I had always been beneath the layers of compromise and accommodation. Moving day arrived 3 weeks later. The modest furniture I'd purchased fit perfectly in my new home, comfortable but not ostentatious, practical yet beautiful. As the movers positioned the last piece, a reading chair placed strategically by the bay window overlooking the garden, I felt a profound sense of rightness settle over me. Would you like us to unpack the boxes, ma'am? Asked the head mover. No, thank you, I replied. I'd like to do that myself. After they left, I wandered through my new domain, savoring the quiet and the knowledge that every decision about this space, from the color of the walls to the arrangement of the furniture, had been mine alone. No compromise, no deference to others' preferences, no attempts to minimize my presence. The doorbell rang, interrupting my reverie. Through the security monitor, I saw a delivery driver with an enormous arrangement of flowers. I hesitated before pressing the intercom. Yes? Delivery for Barbara Collins, the young man announced. I instructed him to leave the arrangement on the porch and waited until he had returned to his van before retrieving it. The bouquet was extravagant: roses, lilies, and orchids in a crystal vase that must have cost a small fortune. I carried it inside and placed it on the kitchen counter, then opened the small envelope tucked among the blooms. Mom, the card read in James's handwriting. Congratulations on your new home. We'd love to see it when you're ready for visitors. All our love, James, Vanessa, and the kids. I stood staring at the card, emotions swirling. In the 3 weeks since claiming my lottery winnings, James had evolved from demanding to pleading to strategically respectful in his communications. This latest gesture, sending flowers rather than showing up unannounced, acknowledging my new home without presuming. An invitation represented yet another tactical adjustment. Was it progress? Perhaps. But the cynical part of me noted that it was also entirely self-serving. James was intelligent enough to realize his initial approach had backfired spectacularly. This new, patient respect was simply a more sophisticated attempt to regain access to my life, and by extension, my fortune. I placed the card on the counter and continued unpacking, beginning with the kitchen. Each plate, each utensil I unwrapped and placed in its designated spot, felt like another small act of self-determination. By evening, the kitchen was fully functional, my bedroom was organized, and I'd made a significant dent in the living room boxes. Exhausted but satisfied, I prepared a simple dinner and ate it on my new patio furniture as the sun set over my garden. The sprinkler system activated automatically, sending a fine mist over the newly planted flower beds. Tomorrow, the landscapers would finish installing the rose garden I'd designed, a luxury I'd always dreamed of, but never imagined I could afford, Darkness fell. My phone chimed with a text message. It was Tyler. Heard you moved into your new place today. Hope it went smoothly. I miss you. Unlike his sister and parents, Tyler had maintained contact without any apparent agenda, sending occasional messages that were refreshingly genuine. I'd had lunch with him once, at a cafe halfway between his university and Patricia's condo, where he'd asked thoughtful questions about my plans and shared his own doubts about following his father into medicine. All unpacked and settling in, I replied. Miss you too. Would love to have you visit sometime soon. His response came quickly. Really? Dad said you weren't ready for visitors yet. I frowned. Of course, James would appoint himself the gatekeeper of access to me. You're welcome anytime, Tyler. This weekend, perhaps? That would be awesome. I could help with any unpacking you have left. We arranged for him to visit Saturday afternoon, and I felt a warmth spread through me at the prospect. Despite everything, I was still a grandmother who missed her grandchildren, or, at least, the one grandchild who seemed to value me as a person rather than a potential benefactor. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birds in my garden rather than the tension-filled silence of James and Vanessa's house. I prepared coffee in my new kitchen, then carried it to the patio to watch the landscapers begin work on the rose garden. My phone rang, Patricia calling with updates on various financial matters. The initial firestorm of media interest had died down, but she had screened several legitimate charitable organizations seeking support and wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss philanthropic planning. I'd like that, I told her. I've been thinking about setting up some kind of nursing scholarship, maybe named for Richard. That's a wonderful idea, she agreed. We can explore options next week. How are you settling into the new house? It feels like home already, I said. I can hardly believe it's mine. You deserve it, Patricia said firmly. Every square inch. After we hung up, I spent the morning continuing to unpack and organize. Around noon, I decided to venture out to the nearby farmers market I'd noticed during previous visits to the botanical gardens. As I selected fresh produce for the coming week, reveling in the simple pleasure of choosing ingredients without worrying about cost, a woman approximately my age approached tentatively. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Barbara Collins?" I tensed slightly, wary of strangers after the media attention. "Yes? I thought so. I recognized you from the newspaper." She smiled warmly. "I'm Eleanor Winters. I volunteer at the botanical gardens just down the street." "Oh, how lovely." I relaxed slightly. "I've always enjoyed those gardens." "We're always looking for new volunteers," she ventured, "especially people with any gardening experience. It's such a wonderful community, mostly retirees like us, but some younger folks too. Very welcoming." The invitation caught me off guard. It had been so long since anyone had simply wanted my company or contribution, without an underlying agenda. "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself. "I'm just getting settled in my new place, but perhaps in a week or two." "Wonderful," Eleanor beamed, handing me a card with the volunteer coordinator's information. "We meet every Tuesday and Thursday morning. It's quite therapeutic, working with the plants. And the coffee klatch afterward isn't bad either." As I continued my shopping, now with a spring in my step, I realized something profound was happening. Day by day, interaction by interaction, I was building not just a new home, but a new life. One based on authentic connections and genuine interests, rather than obligation and dependency. The momentum was building, carrying me forward into a future. I was designing myself, brick by deliberate brick. It wasn't just about the money, although that had been the catalyst. It was about reclaiming agency, about rediscovering parts of myself that had been submerged beneath decades of self-sacrifice. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I was excited about what tomorrow might bring. Saturday afternoon. Arrived with perfect early autumn weather, crisp air, golden sunshine, and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of my newly planted roses through the open windows. I had prepared a light lunch for Tyler's visit and was just arranging cookies on a plate when the security system chimed, alerting me to a car at the gate. I checked the monitor and felt my stomach clench. It wasn't just Tyler at the gate. It was James's SUV with the entire family inside. For a moment, I considered denying entry, enforcing the boundary I had so carefully established. But Tyler's hopeful face was visible in the passenger seat, and I couldn't bring myself to turn him away, even if it meant dealing with the others. I pressed the intercom. "Tyler, I wasn't expecting the whole family." There was a muffled conversation inside the car before Tyler's voice came through. "I'm sorry, Grandma. Dad insisted on driving me. He said it was on their way to somewhere else." A transparent lie, but not Tyler's fault. I sighed and pressed the button to open the gate, then went to the front door to greet them. James emerged from the driver's side first, whistling softly as he took in the property. "Wow, Mom, this is quite a place." Vanessa exited next, her critical eye scanning the exterior of the house, no doubt calculating its value. Emma slouched out last, her attention fixed on her phone until Vanessa nudged her. "Grandma!" Tyler rushed forward to hug me. "I'm really sorry. I didn't know they were all coming." "It's all right," I assured him, returning his embrace before turning to the others. "This is a surprise." "We were heading to the country club for lunch," Vanessa explained smoothly. "And since it's in this direction, we thought we'd drop Tyler off and get a quick peek at your new home. If that's all right, of course." Her deferential tone was so at odds with the way she'd spoken to me for years that it was almost comical. I nodded and stepped aside, allowing them to enter. "It's beautiful, Mom," James said as they moved into the foyer. "Really impressive." I led them through to the living room, which opened onto the kitchen and dining area in an open floor plan that felt both spacious and intimate. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the garden, where the landscapers had completed the rose beds just the day before. My goodness, Vanessa breathed, turning slowly to take in the space. Is that original artwork? She was looking at a large, abstract canvas I'd purchased from a local artist, whose work I'd admired for years but could never afford. Yes, I said simply. I've always loved her work. James wandered to the windows. This garden must have cost a fortune to install. And the security gate, the alarm system. You've gone all out. I wanted to feel safe, I replied, meeting his gaze directly. And I've always loved gardening, as you know. He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable at the implied criticism. It was true. I'd tended their garden for years without any acknowledgement or appreciation. Well, it's all very tasteful, Vanessa offered, her eyes still roving the room, cataloging, assessing. Not ostentatious at all. I was worried you might be taken advantage of by unscrupulous salespeople, but you've clearly had good guidance. I have, I agreed. Would anyone like some lunch? I prepared enough for Tyler, but I can make more. Oh, we couldn't impose, Vanessa said quickly, though her eyes lingered on the beautifully arranged platter I'd prepared. We have reservations at the club. I'd love some, Grandma, Tyler said, pointedly moving toward the dining area. James cleared his throat. Actually, Mom, we were hoping to talk to you briefly before our lunch. About family matters. I regarded him steadily. What family matters? He glanced at Vanessa, who nodded encouragingly. Well, first, we want to apologize for the misunderstanding. About Sunny Pines. We were genuinely concerned about your living situation, but we handled it poorly. Very poorly, Vanessa added with a practiced look of contrition. We should have explored more options with you, not made decisions on your behalf. Their performance was flawless, contrite yet dignified, acknowledging fault without actually accepting responsibility for the hurt they'd caused. It was exactly the kind of non-apology James delivered to difficult patients when hospital policy required it. Thank you for saying that, I said neutrally. James seemed encouraged by my response. We've also been thinking about family traditions, about bringing everyone closer together. We'd like to start having regular Sunday dinners. All of us, including you, of course, maybe alternating between homes. That sounds nice, I said, though I was well aware that in their 5 years of marriage, such family dinners had never been suggested until I had money. And holiday planning, Vanessa added eagerly. Christmas is only a few months away. We thought perhaps a family vacation might be nice. The Four Seasons in Maui has wonderful Christmas packages. I could almost admire the boldness, from evicting me to suggesting I fund a luxury family vacation in the span of a month. I'll consider it, I said, though I've already been looking into some charitable work around the holidays. Of course, James nodded sagely. Philanthropy is important. Speaking of which, here it came, the real purpose of their visit. Emma has been accepted to Princeton for next fall, he continued, smiling proudly at his daughter, who finally looked up from her phone with a practiced smile. Early decision. We're thrilled, of course, though the tuition is substantial. Congratulations, Emma, I said sincerely. That's a wonderful achievement. Thanks, she mumbled. It's whatever. Dad wanted an Ivy League school. James frowned slightly at her lack of enthusiasm. Regardless, it's a tremendous opportunity. We've been discussing setting up education funds for both kids, maybe some trust arrangements. Our financial advisor suggested we consult with you about coordinating our efforts. Perhaps your team could speak with our team? My team? I repeated, letting the phrase hang in the air for a moment. A month ago, I'd been deemed incapable of managing my own basic needs. Now I had a team they wanted to consult. Yes, Vanessa jumped in. We're thinking long-term family financial planning. Obviously, your windfall changes the equation for everyone. I looked around at their expectant faces. James's carefully controlled expression of casual interest masking calculation, Vanessa's barely concealed avarice, Emma's bored entitlement, and Tyler's genuine discomfort with the entire exchange. "Why don't you and I have lunch outside, Tyler?" I suggested, rising from my seat. "James, Vanessa, Emma, I don't want to make you late for your reservation." "But we haven't really discussed," James began. "The family financial planning," I finished for him. "No, we haven't. And we won't be today. When and if I decide to make provisions for my grandchildren's education or any other aspects of this family's financial future, it will be on my terms. In my time." James's face flushed. "Mom, that's not fair. We're trying to have a reasonable discussion about practical matters that affect all of us." "No, James," I said quietly but firmly. "You're trying to establish a claim on money you believe you're entitled to because we share DNA. But here's what you need to understand. My lottery win doesn't erase the fact that you were willing to discard me when I became inconvenient. It doesn't change the years of subtle humiliation in your home. And it certainly doesn't obligate me to fund the lifestyle you think you deserve." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Emma looked up from her phone, shocked by my directness. "I think you should go now," I added gently. "Tyler is welcome to stay for lunch as planned. We can discuss your club reservation another time." "Can't believe you're being this vindictive," Vanessa finally sputtered. "After all we've done for you." I smiled sadly. "That's the problem, Vanessa. You still don't understand what you did, and didn't do. But I do. Now please respect my wishes, and leave." They departed in stony silence, James practically dragging Emma by the arm when she lingered, suddenly interested in the contents of my home now that she'd witnessed my resolve. After they were gone, Tyler and I sat in the garden with our lunch, the awkwardness gradually dissolving into comfortable conversation about his studies, his friends, his doubts about medicine. "I'm sorry about them," he said finally. "They've been obsessed with your money since the news broke. It's all they talk about." "It's not your fault," I assured him. "And you're always welcome here, regardless of what happens with your parents." He looked at me thoughtfully. "You've changed, Grandma. You're different now." "How so?" "You're stronger, more yourself somehow. It's nice to see." His simple observation touched me deeply. Unlike the others who saw only the external trappings of my new wealth, Tyler had recognized the internal transformation, the reclaiming of self that was my true fortune. I hadn't expected James to give up easily, but even I was surprised by his next move. 3 days after their visit, Patricia called me, her voice unusually tense. "Barbara, I've just received some concerning correspondence from a law firm representing your son." My stomach dropped. "What kind of correspondence?" "They're suggesting that you may not be mentally competent to manage your newfound wealth. They're requesting medical evaluations and intimating that they may seek conservatorship if their concerns aren't addressed." For a moment, I couldn't speak, the betrayal cutting so deep it left me breathless. "He's trying to take control of my money." "It appears so," Patricia confirmed grimly. "It's an aggressive tactic, but not uncommon when large sums are involved. The good news is that it's unlikely to succeed. You're clearly of sound mind, and your financial decisions thus far have been prudent and well documented." "What do we need to do?" I asked, already feeling the fight rising within me. "I've contacted Dr. Reynolds, the geriatric specialist you saw last week for your checkup. She's prepared to provide documentation of your cognitive wellness. We'll also gather statements from the financial team about your engagement and decision-making. Capacity. This will be unpleasant, Barbara, but we're well positioned to counter it." After we hung up, I sat in my garden, surrounded by the roses I'd planted, trying to process this latest development. James wasn't just trying to access my money. He was attempting to strip me of my autonomy, to legally classify me as incompetent. It was a calculated, cruel move that revealed just how far he was willing to go. That evening, as I was preparing dinner, the security system alerted me to someone at the gate. Through the monitor, I saw Tyler, alone and looking distressed. "Grandma, can I come in?" he asked through the intercom. "I need to talk to you." I buzzed him in immediately. When he entered the kitchen, I could see he'd been crying. "I just found out what Dad's doing," he blurted out, not even bothering with a greeting. "The lawyer and everything. It's disgusting. I had to come tell you I had nothing to do with it." I wrapped my arms around him, feeling his shoulders shake with emotion. "I know you didn't, sweetheart. I would never think that." We sat at the kitchen island, where I poured him a glass of water and waited for him to collect himself. "I overheard them talking with their lawyer on speakerphone," he explained. "They're trying to say you're having some kind of breakdown or delusion. That winning the lottery has made you unstable." He looked up, his eyes red. "Dad was telling the lawyer how you'd been irrational for years, how you'd declined since moving in with them." "He's making up symptoms, Grandma." Vanessa was backing him up, saying she'd noticed worrying behavior patterns. The calculated nature of their deception shouldn't have surprised me, yet somehow it still did. "I'm so sorry you had to hear that, Tyler." "I confronted him after the call," Tyler continued. "I told him he was lying, that he was just after your money. He said I didn't understand adult matters, that he was trying to protect the family's interests. Then he said if I didn't support them in this, I was choosing you over my own parents." My heart ached for him. At 19, he shouldn't have to be caught in this kind of emotional manipulation. "Tyler, you don't have to choose. I would never ask that of you." "But Dad is," he said bitterly. "And I have chosen." I told him what he's doing is wrong and I won't be part of it. I'm moving out of the house. I've already called my roommate from freshman year. He says I can crash at his apartment until I figure something out. "Tyler, no," I protested. "Don't upend your life because of this. Your education is already paid for through this semester," he finished. "I have a campus job that covers most of my expenses. I'll figure out next semester when the time comes." I studied his face. So young, yet showing a moral clarity his father lacked. "I'm proud of you," I said softly. "Standing up for what's right isn't easy, especially when it means going against family." "Your family too," he said simply. "And what they're doing to you isn't right." As he left that evening, promising to stay in touch, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Heartbreak over James's betrayal was tempered by profound pride in Tyler's integrity. The situation was painful, undeniably so, but there was also something clarifying about it, laying bare the true character of those involved, revealing who could be trusted and who could not. The battle lines had been drawn, not by my choice, but by James's actions. And though I had never wanted conflict, especially with my own son, I found myself ready for the fight. Not just for my money, but for my dignity and autonomy. The legal challenge from James escalated quickly. Within days, I received formal paperwork requesting a competency hearing, a court proceeding that would determine whether I was capable of managing my own affairs. The allegations in the filing were both hurtful and absurd, that I had exhibited erratic decision-making, paranoid tendencies, and inability to recognize familial obligations. Patricia assembled a formidable legal team, including a specialist in elder law who had successfully defended several high-profile clients against similar attacks. We gathered extensive documentation, medical evaluations from 3 different specialists, statements from financial advisors detailing my engagement in complex decision-making, and even testimony from the real estate agent and contractors who had worked with me on my home purchase, all confirming my mental acuity. "They don't have a case," my lawyer, Michael Thornton, assured me as we prepared for the hearing. "Their claims are baseless, and their timing, immediately following your lottery win, makes their motives transparent." Still, the process was grueling. Being forced to prove my competency through tests and evaluations felt fundamentally degrading. Each night, I returned home exhausted, emotionally drained by the ordeal my own son had initiated. 2 days before the scheduled hearing, my doorbell rang. Through the security monitor, I saw Vanessa standing alone at my door, her usual polished appearance notably disheveled. Against my better judgment, I let her in. "Barbara?" she began, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "I know you have every reason to turn me away, but please hear me out." I gestured for her to sit, maintaining a careful distance between us. "James doesn't know I'm here," she continued, perching nervously on the edge of my sofa. "He would be furious if he found out, but I can't go through with this hearing." I studied her carefully, searching for signs of manipulation. "Why not?" "Because it's wrong," she admitted, not meeting my eyes. "The things he's claiming, the things he's asked me to testify about, they're not true. I know that. You know that. Yet you've supported him in this," I noted. "I have," she acknowledged, finally looking up. "Our marriage, it's not what people think. James has always controlled everything, the money, the decisions, our social standing. When I disagree, he reminds me of the prenuptial agreement, of how quickly I could lose everything." I remained silent, unwilling to be drawn into their marital issues. After a moment, she continued, "But this is different. He wants me to lie under oath, to say I observed behaviors that never happened. I can't do that, not even for him." "What are you proposing, Vanessa?" She straightened, seeming to gather her resolve. "I want to withdraw from the case. I won't testify against you. And I have documentation, emails between James and his lawyer where they discuss fabricating evidence about your mental state. I'm willing to submit these to your legal team." My suspicion must have shown on my face, because she quickly added, "I don't want anything from you, Barbara. Not money, not forgiveness. I can't be part of this. It's crossed a line even. I can't justify." The conversation left me deeply unsettled. Part of me wanted to believe in Vanessa's sudden attack of conscience, but years of experience with her manipulation made me wary. I called Patricia immediately after Vanessa left, relaying our conversation and the offer of potentially damning emails. "It could be legitimate," Patricia said thoughtfully. "People do have moments of clarity, especially when asked to commit perjury. But it could also be a trap, a way to undermine our case if we rely on evidence she later claims was fabricated." "What should we do?" I asked. "Let me reach out to her through proper channels. If she's sincere, she'll cooperate formally with our legal team." To my surprise, Vanessa did exactly that. The next morning, she appeared at Patricia's office with printed emails and access to her accounts, allowing our team to verify their authenticity. The evidence was damning. Detailed discussions between James and his lawyer about crafting a narrative of my supposed mental decline, acknowledging there was no real evidence but suggesting that with Vanessa's corroboration, they might convince a sympathetic judge. "Why are you doing this?" I asked Vanessa when Patricia arranged a meeting between us. She looked tired, the perfect facade cracked to reveal something vulnerable beneath. "Because Tyler was right," she said simply. "What James is doing is wrong, and I've been complicit in too many wrong things in the name of security and status." I didn't fully trust her sudden moral awakening, but the evidence she provided was genuine and potent. With it, our legal position strengthened considerably. The day of the hearing, I arrived at the courthouse to find a small crowd gathered outside, reporters who had caught wind of the sensational case of the lottery winner whose son was trying to seize control of her fortune. Patricia guided me through the chaos, shielding me from questions and cameras. Inside, I saw James for the first time since his failed visit to my home. He sat with his lawyer, his expression thunderous as he noticed Vanessa seated on our side of the courtroom beside Tyler. When our eyes met, I expected to see anger or calculation, but instead, his gaze held something more complex, a flickering. Uncertainty that suggested, perhaps for the first time, he realized he had miscalculated badly. The hearing itself was anticlimactic. When our lawyer presented the emails Vanessa had provided, along with her affidavit describing how James had pressured her to lie, his legal team requested a recess. 20 minutes later, they returned to withdraw the petition entirely. The judge, clearly displeased with the waste of court resources, addressed James directly before dismissing the case. Mr. Collins, I strongly advise you to reconsider any further legal actions against your mother. The evidence suggests this petition was not filed in good faith, and any similar attempts may result in sanctions. As we exited the courtroom, James approached, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. "This isn't over," he muttered, low enough that only I could hear. "You've turned my wife against me, poisoned my son's mind. I won't forget that." I looked at my son, this stranger wearing the face of the boy I'd raised, and felt a profound sadness wash over me. "No, James," I replied quietly. "This is over. Whatever comes next, whatever choices you make, I won't engage in further battles. With you. Not because I can't win, but because there's nothing left to fight for." 3 weeks after the failed court hearing, James requested a meeting. His message, delivered through Patricia rather than directly to me, was brief and formal. He wished to speak privately, at a neutral location of my choosing, with no lawyers present. After consulting with Patricia, who advised caution, but acknowledged the potential value of resolution, I agreed to meet at a private dining room in an upscale restaurant downtown. I arrived early, accompanied by a security guard Patricia had insisted upon, who positioned himself discreetly outside the room. James entered precisely on time, looking thinner than when I'd last seen him. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a tightly controlled rigidity that spoke of someone holding themselves together through sheer force of will. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he began stiffly, taking the seat across from me. "You're welcome," I replied, waiting for him to explain his purpose. He stared at the table for a long moment before meeting my eyes. "Vanessa has filed for divorce. She's moving in with her sister next week." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I took no pleasure in the dissolution of his marriage. "Are you?" he asked sharply, a flash of the old anger surfacing. "She's been in contact with you. Tyler's been staying at your house. Emma's stopped speaking to me. My entire family has been dismantled in the span of a month." I considered my response carefully. "James, I haven't encouraged anyone to take sides or make decisions about their relationship with you. Those choices are their own." "Because of the money," he insisted. "They think you'll cut them out of your will if they stand by me." "Is that what you think of your own children? That their loyalty can be purchased?" He faltered slightly. "I don't know what to think anymore. Everything's falling apart and it all started with that damn lottery ticket." "No," I said gently but firmly. "It started long before that. The lottery didn't create these problems, James. It merely revealed what was already there. Your sense of entitlement, your conditional care, your willingness to discard people when they no longer serve your purposes." "That's not fair," he protested, but the words lacked conviction. "Isn't it? You were ready to send me to a retirement home I couldn't afford. You kicked me out of your house when I refused. Then, when you discovered I had money, you tried to seize control of it by legally declaring me incompetent. Which part? Am I misrepresenting?" He had no answer for that. Instead, he asked, "Do you hate me?" The question caught me off guard with its raw vulnerability. In that moment, he looked less like the calculating man who had tried to take everything from me, and more like the boy who had once sought my reassurance after making a mistake. "No, James," I said softly. "I don't hate you. I'm disappointed, deeply hurt, and I don't trust you. But I don't hate you. I don't think I could ever hate my own child, no matter what he did." He seemed to crumple slightly at my words, years of carefully constructed defenses beginning to crack. "I've made a mess of everything," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I don't know how to fix it." "Start by looking honestly at yourself," I suggested. "At the man you've become versus the man you wanted to be. The gap between those two is where your work begins." "And us?" he asked hesitantly. "Is there any way forward for us?" I considered the question seriously, searching my heart for the truth. "I don't know, James. Trust, once broken, is very difficult to rebuild. I'm not closing the door entirely, but any relationship we might have in the future would need to be built on new foundations, not old assumptions." As he left, shoulders bowed under the weight of consequences he'd never anticipated, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for what had been lost, relief that the confrontation was over, and a quiet certainty that regardless of what James chose to do next, my own path forward was clear. 2 days after our meeting, a large package arrived at my home. Inside was an antique music box I'd once admired in a shop window years ago when James and I had been shopping for Vanessa's birthday gift. I had forgotten the incident entirely, but apparently he had not. A handwritten note accompanied it. "I've been thinking about all the times you put your own desires aside for mine. This is the first of many amends I hope to make. James." The gesture was both touching and troubling. While I appreciated the thoughtfulness of remembering something I'd once admired, the timing made me wary. Was this genuine remorse, or another calculated attempt to regain access to my life, and by extension, my fortune? Over the next few weeks, James's campaign of reconciliation intensified. Flowers arrived weekly. Handwritten letters recounting happy memories from my year's raising. Him appeared in my mailbox. He even volunteered at the botanical gardens where I had begun spending Tuesday mornings, showing up in work clothes ready to mulch beds and prune shrubs alongside the other volunteers. "Your son seems very devoted," Eleanor commented one morning, as we watched James cheerfully hauling mulch across the Japanese garden section. "He's been telling everyone how much he admires your resilience." I smiled non-committally, unsure how to explain the complexity of our situation. James was certainly putting on a convincing show of filial devotion, so convincing that I sometimes found myself wanting to believe in his transformation. Then came the invitation. A small dinner at his house, just James, Tyler, Emma, and me. "A fresh start for our family," the note read. "No agenda, no expectations, just a chance to begin healing together." I shared the invitation with Patricia during our weekly lunch. "What do you think?" I asked, passing her the elegantly handwritten card. She studied it thoughtfully. "It's entirely your decision, Barbara. The question is whether you're ready for this step. Do you believe his change of heart is genuine?" "I want to," I admitted. "He's saying all the right things, making all the right gestures. But I can't forget how quickly he turned on me before." "Trust your instincts," Patricia advised. "They've served you well so far." After careful consideration, I decided to accept the invitation with some modifications. I suggested meeting at a restaurant instead of his home, and I asked that Tyler be the one to choose the venue since he had relationships with both James and me. James readily agreed to my conditions, which I took as a positive sign. The dinner was scheduled for the following Friday at a modestly upscale Italian restaurant that Tyler had selected. I arrived precisely on time to find James and Emma already seated at a corner table. Tyler had texted that he was running a few minutes late due to traffic from campus. "Mom," James stood to greet me, his smile warm but nervous. "Thank you for coming." Emma offered a tentative smile as well, more subdued than I'd ever seen her. "Hi, Grandma." The initial conversation was stilted but civil as we navigated the new territory of interacting as adults with a complicated history rather than falling into our old patterns. James spoke about changes at the hospital, Emma about her college preparations, while I shared anecdotes about my volunteer work at the gardens. Tyler arrived 15 minutes late, sliding into his seat with an apology and a quick hug for me. "Now that we're all here," James said after we'd ordered, "I want to say something important." He took a deep breath, his expression serious. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since everything happened, a lot of soul-searching, and I owe all of you, but especially you, Mom, a real apology." He looked directly at me, his eyes holding mine steadily. "What I did was inexcusable. Trying to force you into Sunny Pines, kicking you out when you refused, then attempting to take control of your money through the courts, it was all wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong." The sincerity in his voice seemed genuine, and I found myself wanting to believe him. "I've been seeing a therapist," he continued, "trying to understand why I became the kind of person who would treat his own mother that way. It's been illuminating and humbling." Emma shifted uncomfortably in her seat while Tyler watched his father intently. "I don't expect immediate forgiveness," James added. "I don't even know if forgiveness is possible after what I've done. But I want you all to know that I'm committed to changing, to being the kind of man my family can be proud of again." As dinner progressed, the conversation gradually became more natural. James spoke about possibly cutting back his hours at the hospital to focus more on family. Emma, to my surprise, mentioned reconsidering Princeton in favor of the State University, where Tyler was studying. "The pressure of an Ivy League school doesn't seem worth it anymore," she explained, showing the first real glimpse of self-reflection I'd seen from her. "After everything that's happened, I'm thinking about what I really want, not just what looks impressive." By dessert, I found myself cautiously optimistic. The evening had gone better than I'd dared hope, with what appeared to be genuine connection beginning to rebuild among us. As we prepared to leave, James asked if he could walk me to my car. Once outside, he hesitated, then pulled an envelope from his pocket. "I wanted to give you this privately," he said, handing it to me. "It's not a request or an expectation, just something I thought might interest you." Inside was a glossy brochure for a luxury tour company, the page marked to a Healing Waters tour of natural hot springs in Japan. "You always talked about wanting to visit Japan someday," James explained, "especially the traditional onsen. I remember you reading that book about their healing properties when I was in high school." I stared at the brochure, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness of remembering a dream I'd mentioned so long ago. "I thought," he continued carefully, "that it might be nice if we could all go together. A real family vacation. My treat, of course," he added quickly. "I've been saving. And with the reduction in hours I'm planning, I could take the time off." The offer seemed heartfelt, the gesture meaningful. Yet something in his phrasing, "my treat, of course," struck a discordant note. If he was truly saving for such an extravagant trip while planning to reduce his income, his financial situation must be considerably more strained than he was letting on. "It's a lovely idea," I said, keeping my tone warm. "Let me think about it." As I drove home, the evening replaying in my mind, I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. James's transformation seemed too complete, too perfectly calibrated to address my every concern. The apology, the therapy, the family-focused career change, the thoughtful gift recalling a long-ago dream, it all fit together a bit too neatly, like a carefully constructed narrative designed to achieve a specific outcome. My intuition proved correct. The following morning, Tyler called, his voice tense. "Grandma, there's something you should know. After you left the restaurant last night, Dad got a call and stepped outside. I went to use the restroom and overheard him talking in the hallway. He was speaking to his financial advisor. I felt a familiar sinking sensation." "What did you hear, Tyler?" "He was discussing liquidating some investments to cover mortgage payments. Then he mentioned the Japan trip investment and how it needed to seem like his idea, not something he was asking for. He said something like, Once we're all together on vacation, I can bring up the family trust concept again. She'll be more receptive in that environment. I closed my eyes, a wave of disappointment washing over me. Thank you for telling me, Tyler. I'm sorry, Grandma. I really thought he was changing. So did I admitted. Or at least, I wanted to believe it. After we hung up, I sat in my garden, watching the butterflies flit between my roses, and contemplated what to do next. The pattern was clear. James would continue his campaign of reconciliation, each step carefully calculated to rebuild trust until he could make another attempt at accessing my wealth. The methods had become more sophisticated, the approach more patient, but the underlying motivation remained unchanged. Rather than confront him directly, I decided on a different approach. I called Patricia and set several wheels in motion. 2 weeks later, I invited James, Tyler, and Emma to my home for brunch. They arrived together, James bringing an expensive bottle of champagne to celebrate our new beginning. After we'd eaten, I asked them to join me in the living room. 3 envelopes sat on the coffee table, each bearing one of their names. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I began, about family, about legacy, and about what true security means. I'd like each of you to open your envelope. They did so, Tyler and Emma exchanging confused glances while James maintained a carefully neutral expression that didn't quite mask his anticipation. Inside each envelope was documentation of an educational trust I'd established. For Tyler and Emma, the trust would cover all higher education expenses, including graduate school if they chose that path. For James, I had funded a continuing education account specifically for therapeutic training. During our dinner, you mentioned seeing a therapist and finding it illuminating, I explained to James. It occurred to me that with your medical background and newfound appreciation for psychological healing, you might find fulfillment in a career transition to therapeutic work. This fund will cover any training or certification you might need to explore that path. James stared at the document, visibly struggling to mask his disappointment. This was not the wide-open access to my fortune he'd been angling for. That's thoughtful, he managed finally. There's more, I continued. I've also established a family foundation focused on elderly care and financial literacy. All 3 of you are named as board members, alongside professional trustees. The foundation will fund scholarships for nursing students specializing in geriatric care and support programs, teaching financial independence to seniors. Emma looked genuinely intrigued. So we'd help decide where the money goes? Yes, within the foundation's mission parameters. It's a chance to do meaningful work together as a family, addressing issues that have touched our lives directly. Tyler smiled, understanding immediately what I'd done. The arrangement would allow us to rebuild relationships through shared constructive work while maintaining appropriate boundaries. The educational trusts provided genuine support without enabling dependency or entitlement. James set his paperwork aside carefully. And the Japan trip? The foundation's first board meeting is scheduled in Kyoto next spring, I explained. All expenses will be covered for board members. We can extend the trip to include the onsen tour you mentioned, if you're interested. His expression was a complex mixture of emotions, disappointment at being outmaneuvered, grudging respect for the elegance of my solution, and perhaps, beneath it all, a glimmer of genuine appreciation for the opportunity I was offering. Not wealth itself, but a pathway to redemption through meaningful work. I'll need to check my schedule, he said finally. Of course, I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. It's entirely your choice, James. That's the point. In that moment, I saw something shift in his eyes, a reluctant recognition that the dynamics between us had permanently changed. I had found a way to be generous without being exploited, to remain connected without being controlled. 1 year after winning the lottery, I celebrated my 71st birthday in my garden, surrounded by friends I'd made at the botanical gardens, Tyler, and his new girlfriend, Emma, who had indeed chosen the state university, and even James, who had begun his counseling certification program and was attending our small gathering with careful politeness. As the afternoon sun filtered through the rose arbor I'd designed, casting dappled shadows across the faces of people who had become my chosen family, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. The money had changed my life, undeniably. I lived in comfort I'd never imagined possible. I traveled, when I wished, donated to causes I believed in, and never worried about affording medication or health care. But the true transformation had nothing to do with wealth and everything to do with reclaiming my worth. That evening, after my guests had departed, I sat alone on my patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in strokes of pink and gold. The solitude felt peaceful now, a chosen state rather than an imposed isolation. I thought about Eleanor, who had become a dear friend, about Patricia, whose initial professional guidance had blossomed into genuine mutual respect, about the other volunteers at the gardens who valued my contributions regardless of my bank balance. I thought too about James and our complicated path toward a new kind of relationship. The foundation work had provided a structured environment where we could interact with purpose rather than falling into old patterns. He wasn't the son I'd once imagined having in my later years, the devoted child who would care for me out of love rather than obligation, but he was finding his way toward becoming someone more authentic, more self-aware than the man who had once dismissed me as a burden. The greatest lesson of my unexpected fortune wasn't about money at all. It was about the clarifying power of crisis, the way extreme circumstances strip away pretense and reveal essential truths. When James kicked me out at 70, he had inadvertently set me free from the thankless role of family servant, free from the constant accommodation of others at my own expense, free from the belief that my value lay solely in what I could provide. The lottery win had merely amplified this freedom, giving it practical expression. The money wasn't the miracle, the awakening was. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, I pulled out a small notebook and began to write the wisdom I wished to share with my grandchildren, with the scholarship recipients our foundation would support, with anyone who might benefit from the hard-won insights of my journey. True wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in self-determination. The ability to say no when necessary, to set boundaries that protect your spirit, to walk away from relationships that diminish rather than enhance your life. These are the real treasures, available to everyone regardless of financial status. It's never too late to reclaim yourself. At 70, I discovered parts of me that had been buried beneath decades of compromise and self-sacrifice. Those rediscovered aspects, my love of gardening, my eye for beauty, my capacity for friendship outside family bonds, have brought me more joy than any material comfort. Generosity is a gift you give yourself, but only when it flows from genuine choice rather than manipulation or obligation. When I was pressured to give, resentment followed. When I choose to give, through the foundation, through mentoring young volunteers at the gardens, through supporting Tyler's education, the satisfaction is profound. The most valuable inheritance you can leave is not money, but example. I hope my grandchildren remember not just that their grandmother won the lottery, but that she used it to construct a life of meaning and purpose after decades of putting herself last. I hope they learn that standing up for your own worth is not selfish, but essential. I closed the notebook as the night fully descended, wrapping the garden in gentle darkness punctuated by the solar lights that lined the paths. Tomorrow would bring its own activities, a foundation meeting to review scholarship applications, a lunch with Eleanor to plan the garden club's annual fundraiser, perhaps a call from Tyler about his summer internship plans. This was the life I had built, piece by deliberate piece from the ruins of rejection. Not perfect, not without lingering sadness over what might have been, but authentic and chosen rather than imposed or endured. The irony wasn't lost on me. By kicking me out when I was at my most vulnerable, James had unwittingly given me the opportunity to discover my greatest strength. By treating me as worthless at the very moment I'd secretly become wealthy, he had revealed truths about himself, our relationship, and the hollow values he'd embraced that no amount of pretense could have concealed. The $380 million had changed my material circumstances dramatically, but the truly valuable discovery had cost nothing. At 70 years old, I had finally learned that the only approval I truly needed was my own. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.